Okay, so you know what we're talking about when we say moderate intensity or vigorous intensity. But what's the evidence that this actually matters for health? Here's the evidence showing the connection between aerobic exercise and risk of death. This is the study. It's available in PDF format in the resources section of this lecture. The study was published in the Journal of the American Medical Association, or JAMA, Internal Medicine. It was a systematic review and meta-analysis published in April 2015. Over 500,000 adults were included in the review, and the follow-up period for the studies included was a median of 14.2 years. The outcome of interest was, does meeting the guidelines for aerobic exercise reduce mortality in the follow-up period compared to not exercising? The aerobic exercise recommendations referred to were put out by the Physical Activity Guidelines for America, published in 2018, and they are the same as what we talked about in the definition of sufficient aerobic exercise: 150 minutes of moderate intensity or 75 minutes of vigorous intensity each week. So the authors were looking at that amount of exercise. Did it have any impact on someone's lifespan? And the investigators found that indeed, during the follow-up period, people who met the recommendations for aerobic exercise had a 23 to 27% reduction in mortality compared to those who were not active. Let's take a closer look at this graph, which came from the study. On the x-axis is minutes of physical activity per week. On the y-axis is risk of death. Now we're comparing exercise to not exercise. So this was the effect of not doing any exercise in the follow-up period. That was the comparison. Then what the authors did is they looked at people who were doing moderate intensity activity, and they put them into groups based on how much they were doing per week, and vigorous intensity activity. The yellow represents the recommended guidelines. So blue is the moderate activity. 150 minutes of moderate activity is what's recommended, or 75 minutes of vigorous intensity activity is shown in the orange line. So you can see that compared to someone not exercising, someone who was exercising for 75 minutes at vigorous intensity per week had a 23% lower risk of dying during the follow-up period than someone who wasn't exercising. Additionally, in blue is the moderate intensity group. Individuals who were exercising at 150 minutes per week at moderate intensity had a 27% lower risk of death than those who were not exercising. What I find interesting about this is that the benefit of moderate intensity activity is actually greater than vigorous intensity. We tend to think that the more it hurts, the better it is for us, and the harder it is, the better the payoff. But what this graph shows is that if you meet the recommendations for moderate intensity, you're actually going to have a greater benefit to your health than meeting the benefits for vigorous intensity activity. So a lot of people think they have to get in a run to get aerobic exercise, or they have to break a sweat to meet aerobic exercise goals. But in fact, walking has an even better effect.